We'll see what happens. Okay. I think we're live.
I think so. It's always hard to
Hello.
tell. Oh, yes, yeah, we are. I just checked.
We're live. Lovely. Yeah. Okay, so welcome to another episode of the book club.
Yes.
This is number 2, so this one's now on my channel, and we've got Jemima, who I'm sure you know from watching the first one, with her lovely channel. Do you want to say a bit about your channel?
Yeah, so I was just thinking about this before, but I'm from the channel Jemima Rose, which I'm sure Anna will link
Yes,
somewhere at some point. I post mostly bookish videos, but I also just kind of post whatever I want, which is probably not what you're meant to do, but it works.
I do that as well, though.
Yes.
I just have so much random content.
Yeah. So I think we're going to be alternating every single one of these, like from my channel to Anna's channel and vice versa. Yeah.
And I think initially we were really ambitious and we're saying we're going to do it every month, but we will have to see what happens.
Yeah, as soon as term starts again, that might be a bit difficult, but
yes. How are you feeling about term starting? Because we're obviously going into our 3rd year.
Yeah. I got a message from a friend being like, "When are you coming back? Because like I'm moving in soon." I was like, "What?" I'm not moving in until like end of August, beginning of September. Yeah.
Yeah,
like
I'm
moving
moving
my stuff
into the
in
start of September.
Yeah.
Where will you be living in? Halls or
Yeah.
Homes?
Yeah, same place.
Same place, yeah. I'm living in Halls again.
Oh, nice.
Easier. But anyway,
I can actually stay there.
yeah, nice that I don't have to keep moving out.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about Mother.
Oh.
Ooh, they look slightly different colours, but I'm sure they're identical.
You got the signed one, right?
I got the signed one, yes.
Nice.
Let me see. It's got her signature there.
That's very nice.
I've been trying really hard not to buy hardbacks, but I do really like this one.
Yeah, I think also because we've been choosing new releases, it's kind of hard to. Although I really do love this cover, actually.
So do I. I can't quite put my finger on what it is I love about it, but I really like it. I tried to dress in like similar colours. I haven't quite got the red.
Yeah.
I tried to base it on the book.
I think this like kind of, it's like Matisse, Picasso, like kind of line drawing of a face I really like. I'm not sure how relevant it is to the actual story.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like, having read the book, I don't know if I pick this cover. I think it works. Like, it kind of reminds me of Normal People in a way, like especially the American cover with the 2 sort of abstract things on it. But I don't know if I would have chosen it because the book itself, actually, it's quite dark.
It's really dark, yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have
expected much darker
than
I thought it was going to be.
So you chose this one.
Yes.
So do you want to talk a bit about why you picked it?
I don't have a very good reason. I really, sorry, there's a fly in my room. I don't have a very good reason. I like Annie Mac. I think she's a nice person. I think I admire that she like took herself up from Ireland and moved down to London, didn't know what on earth she was doing when she got there. Like, actually, there's one thing we can mention is she's actually retiring from her job as presenter at Radio 1. And she's been
just finished.
Yeah. And she's been posting kind of these photos pretty much every day, like leading up to the day she leaves, kind of talking about her past. And I just think it's very cool, like what she did. She kind of built herself up, and she's like such a good personality and everything. And I also really respect like her in interviews with music artists, the way like she actually like has an engaging conversation with them, because I think it's quite easy for them not to, even though they're talking to like very cool people, to kind of just go into like their like drilling out their questions. But I think she actually like bothers to care about the people she's talking to and whatever. And so
I read an interview with her, I think it was with the Irish Times, where she was talking about interviewing Lana Del Rey.
Yeah.
And she was saying that Lana ended up having this really long conversation, and there was this point in her head as a presenter that was thinking, I need to finish this.
Yeah.
But she knew that Lana needed the space to talk.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting, you know, that she she knows that it's not just about the job, but it's about the people.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think the book is very people focused as well.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, it's so much about the inner turmoils that people are going through as well, I think.
And also it explains like a part of life, or like a specific people or something, which is so far removed to what she does, or what she has been doing. So I think the fact that she can still be in touch with that, it means that she's probably quite like an empathetic person.
Yes, yeah, that's
but
as well.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to support her, and I also heard that it was getting amazing initial reviews, and like people were.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
And people were like, there was this huge deal with the fact that it was a debut and it was doing so well, and so
that's my dogs. That'll be the postman. Yes.
Mate, that's my reasoning. Yeah.
They'll be quiet in a minute. But yes, what were you saying? You were saying
that's just the reasons why I wanted to read it.
Why you wanted to read it?
Yeah.
I went into it with absolutely no clue what it was about.
No, neither.
Like, I literally knew nothing. I went into it completely blind. But I was really drawn to the fact that she wrote it.
Yeah.
Although I knew her as Annie Mac. So I don't think I would have known that if you hadn't told me about it. I don't think I would have twigged that it was her. I don't know. Maybe I was just being a bit slow. But I really enjoyed it. But I have to say, it's not the kind of book I would choose.
Yeah.
Like, having read the blurb, which talks about, you know, her father numbing his pain with drink, and it sounds quite dark, although not as dark as it was. It was really,
I probably threw the deep end a bit there, because I didn't know anything about it either. And again, like you said, like the cover seems much happier than it actually is. It's a very
lots of people say hello.
Oh, I think if you click on the comments, they come on the screen.
Oh, let me try. I'm new to all this. There's Martina watching. And then will it go away in a minute?
No, you have to remove it. You just click on it again.
Okay. Okay. You'll have to bear with me while I'm being a complete amateur at this. But anyway, okay, so if we think about, because last time we had quite a deep discussion about the characters in Malibu Rising, was there a character in this that you really connected to?
Oh, should we do a quick synopsis?
Yes, let's do a synopsis. Good idea. I would say that off the top of my head, it's about this woman, Mary, and following her whole life up to this point. So her being a young girl, growing up in Belfast, I think.
Yeah.
I read it at the beginning of the month.
Yeah.
Growing up in Ireland. And it's very much about her personal growth, I would say.
Yeah.
And the sacrifices she makes for other people.
Yeah, the last paragraph is very good. That says a story about family grief, addiction, motherhood. Asks an important question: if you spend your whole life giving everything to the ones that you love, do you risk losing yourself along the way?
That's exactly what I was about to say and thinking.
Yeah.
That she definitely isn't. I would say she's as far from being self-centered as possible. Like, she dedicates everything to other people, which was really interesting to read after Malibu Rising, because that's a book about very like sparkly celebrity characters. Although Nina, who we talked about, does dedicate a lot to her family, this couldn't have been more different from the world they were living in. I think it was
I agree.
Completely different. I'm really enjoying books set in Ireland, though. I've never
I saw your Instagram post.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying them. And I hate to keep comparing it, but it did remind me of Normal People, especially the lack of quotation marks, which I have to say I'm not too keen on personally, although I was listening to the audiobook, so it didn't bother me that much because I was just like dipping in and out of the text.
I thought it might have been something to distinguish like the past chapters and the chapters set in the present, but actually it's not like that at all. It's just yeah. I tried to look into it. I didn't really find anything. I guess maybe she's just trying to distinguish herself as a writer, you know.
I was wondering whether it was her decision or whether it was the publisher's. Like whether the publisher was copying a trend or whether she'd written it like that to begin with. I think that would be quite interesting to know.
Yeah, I'd love to know that. I would definitely ask her if she ever saw this.
And also, it's interesting. It's published by Wildfire, who I hadn't heard of before. But I looked into it, and Annie said that I think 14 publishers turned it down.
Wow.
Even though she's that well known. Because as I've mentioned to you before, they were saying that she should have written a memoir first and then gone on to try and write a novel. But I think it's really brave that she's done this. A bold move to do something
I think
so unorthodox.
If you have a story to tell and you like, she's clearly very passionate about it, like the way I've seen her talk about it. I don't see like why you wouldn't try and go ahead with that. But I am surprised that she had to try that many, because you think people would be like, please do a memoir, and then she'd be like, no thank you, and then they'd accept it anyway, you know.
I mean,
I'm surprised by that.
I would love to read a memoir, but I think she's clearly brilliant at writing. Like you said that you can tell at times it feels like a debut novel, but I have to say I thought there was some really beautiful
not for the majority of it,
in it. And really, like, she writes in such an authentic way as well. It was very easy to read, but still very powerful, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, which character did you relate to the most? Was there one that you felt you connected to, or one that was your favourite?
I don't think there was one that I necessarily like connected to, but I enjoyed what's the name of her brother? Sean, right?
Sean.
Yeah. I really liked Sean's character, and I think that was I think he obviously could have done a lot more to help her when she was little, but I think he was just like being a kid, you know, and I kind of like I appreciated that, and I appreciated like how he tried to like have like a normal life with his friends and everything like that at the same time. But then after that, definitely TJ. I think it was just such a sweetheart, like the sweetest boy.
I just loved him. I really loved him, and I really liked how I think with all of the characters, you saw them do things that were really quite questionable and make mistakes. And TJ definitely made a lot of mistakes. Like you could see he was quite a reckless character. But I just loved him. I can't quite put my finger on why, but I found him so endearing as a character. Especially when you kind of get to see his vulnerabilities and how he presents himself to other people versus how he is when he's just at home by himself, worried about his mum. I have to say, I agree with you that I didn't connect to the characters as much as I did with Malibu Rising. But I think that's because I really connected to Nina being a sibling. Whereas obviously a lot of this is based on motherhood, and I've never been a mother. And based on having brothers as well. I don't have a brother, I have sisters. I know you have brothers. But yes, I didn't relate to it quite as much. But
I don't know. I thought because it's quite heavy hitting, it would have been something that I would have or even if I didn't like empathize with them, I'd sympathize for them, you know. But I didn't either. There were just like there were scenes of TJ's that were just like really endearing, like how he went to the next door neighbor to borrow baking powder in his mum's apron.
Yes, that was the one I was going to mention. I loved that scene.
Yeah, and he put on his best shirt to go to the police station to report her missing, and things like that, which I just thought were really. It shows that like level of care, which from like a teenage boy, I think he's 18 or something. you don't kind of expect to see, but like it's something that I see like in my brothers, that like that outward appearance to like the rest of the world is quite like well, it's probably like the pressure of being like a boy, you know. But then you see that softer side of them, like, and you can kind of see it like come through at certain points, which I really like.
Well, that's something I've never experienced, because obviously not having a brother, I've only seen the external side of boys and men and what they present. And so I find it fascinating reading about these vulnerabilities and these softer sides that you don't get to see. And I love it when an author really explores that. And I think we should mention, because I realised I forgot in the synopsis, that TJ, this teenage boy, he is the only child of Mary, who I think had him when she was a teenager, was it?
I think she got pregnant when she was 17.
Yeah. And then when TJ is
18... No, it was the night of her 18th.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, it was her. Yes, it was the birthday card.
Yeah.
Yes. But Mary goes missing for a period of time that I will not spoil, but TJ is completely left on his own because he doesn't really have any other family members to rely on. And he has to try and find his mother. And that's kind of the crux of the book, that's sort of it's weaved into the narrative, but then you very much see it jumps about in time. So you see a lot
it's
of
like past. In order to solve the present, you need to like revisit the past.
That's so good. That should be on the bus jacket. I feel like that's the whole book.
Yeah.
In order to solve the present, I think that's exactly what Mary as a character tries to avoid doing. She thinks that she can just keep pushing forwards without ever addressing all of this emotional baggage that she has. And it's only by actually addressing that and acknowledging everything that's happened to her that she's able to move forward at all, I think.
It's like the quote from Malibu Rising about I don't remember the metaphor or whatever it was, but having to look through your parents' the boxes. You look through your parents' boxes and put down what you can't take with you. And I feel like she's never gone through that process of trying to move on in her life. Yeah,
because I think she would see that as a weakness.
Yeah,
and I think other characters would as well. Like, I feel like her dad would agree with that.
Yeah,
that they're a family who don't address feelings, and they don't have conversations or dialogue with each other. Having said that, another character that I really liked was the other gardener. I can't remember what his name was.
Oh, yeah.
But Mary makes a friend with a colleague, and he's an older man, and it's the first time she's been able to sort of talk to someone.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. It's gone. I feel like it begins with an S, but I can't remember. But I loved him. Sid. That was it.
Yeah.
I really loved him because he definitely had a lot of skeletons in his own closet. Like, he had things that he was hiding, and he wasn't fully in tune with himself, I don't think. But they were both very happy just coexisting, which I thought was really lovely.
I think it's nice seeing like a bit of an age gap in the friendship as well, because I think older people are often neglected, like in real life, but particularly in stories. So it was nice seeing him not play that kind of like the role of the older person. He was just a friend for her, and that's what she needed.
And I would say the main thing that I really loved about this book is that I felt like it was praising the mundane and the ordinary. And so many, particularly films, but often books, have this hero narrative of achieving success and, achieving goals and then feeling good about yourself. Whereas this was very much focused on like an ordinary person doing a completely normal job, and yet still trying to sort of achieve happiness. Almost sounds too strong, but get to a point where she felt comfortable in herself.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking after herself and feeling able to move forward. And I really found that refreshing, because it wasn't about that hero narrative and, you know, you have to achieve everything, but it was more about how heroic it can be just to take time for yourself.
Yeah.
Sort
There was
yourself
actually
out.
nothing in there that isn't like plausible to have actually happened to someone, you know, like it could have been a biography
Yes,
or an
yeah, I
autobiography even.
completely
Yeah.
agree. And it's made me, this sounds really weird, but it's made me sort of, I've had a few daydreams where I've been watching like people gardening. Like I was seeing this man gardening for the council the other day when I was on my lunch break, and it was making me think about this book.
Yeah.
What's he going through?
Yeah, exactly.
Who is this
Everyone
man?
has a story. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's made me think much more about the stories that individuals have that might be seen as unremarkable and not something you'd read like a novel or watch a film about, but they're actually so interesting. So yeah, it's really got me thinking about that, which I'd been aware of before because obviously like I've worked retail, waiting, things like that, but I hadn't thought about it in that sense.
Yeah. It's the fact that someone, like, it's not just that someone has like a life that is, it's the fact that people have lives that like worth writing about, you know.
Yes, exactly.
You can create an entire story, and this is just someone who, I mean, if anyone walked past her in the street, if she was a real person, they wouldn't even like look twice at her.
Yes,
or
exactly.
they'd look at her and they'd think like negative things about her.
Whereas she's really happy, like in the sense of being content, being content in her gardening job, and she loves her work and she's really good at her work. And it talks a lot about how skillful that work is and how much time she's spent like learning about all the different plants and how she finds peace when she's working as well.
Yeah, there was a quote I saved actually. I posted it. I captioned it. It was like she was just talking about the gardening, and it says it was her own piece.
Yes.
And I think it was actually not Sean, TJ reflecting on her job, and how he found it kind of unusual, but at the same time like respecting it because of what it brought for her, which I think is really nice, because I think there's you know, it might not be the sort of job that you aspire to, but it's like it needs to be done, and like it can be just what someone needs, you know.
I would say that's one of the key conflicts of the book as well. Maybe not in terms of emotion, but that's kind of the trigger that TJ thinks makes her go away, is when he says her job isn't good enough. For him, he means in terms of his aspirations, and that he wants to go to New York. And I think there's a lot of pressure, particularly for people our age, this idea that people in the West, our age, could do anything and should be doing things and aspiring to big things. And I really like the fact that in this book, they're like, no, it's okay to not be doing all of that. And she's actually very content where she is and very good at her work. And I found that really refreshing to read about. I just thought it was really nice to read a normal story.
I've a conversation with friends like who are a couple of years older than me or whatever, and they're living in London or moving to London or something along those lines, and then they'll end the conversation by being like, oh, do you think you'll end up in London? And it's just like, I would only end up in London probably like aside from like job things, but just because it feels like the natural thing you do if you're like when you reach that age in life.
And TJ has that as well, that he's like, I have to move, I have to, you know, go and do all of these things. Even though he doesn't really know where he's going, I think he has this fear of ending up like his mum. Like this irrational, ingrained fear that I have to do all of this instead. And so he loses respect for her, I think.
Motivated by his father. Because there's a great line.
Bit of a spoiler, but that he was basing those beliefs on something that was unfounded anyway.
He says that he like talks about this conversation that he has with her, and how he's like, oh, mum will say like I just want to go there because of dad, but it's not because of dad, although it would be more convenient like if I was over there. Again, like it's just so endearing, but also it shows like how naive he is in it all, but he thinks like the way to kind of get his life on track is by meeting his father, who's going to be this amazing person, and then and being in a completely different part of the world, you know.
I have to say that did really break my heart towards, spoiler alert, towards the end, when his father does materialize, and you know that Mary's sort of losing a part of TJ.
Yeah.
And of course, she can't control that. But I saw a really interesting quote that Annie said. I've got it on my phone. Let me get it up. Where she was talking about Mary, and she said that deciding to have a baby at a young age is quite a telling decision. But it's a way of Mary being able to say that she means something, and that she is purposeful, and she has a purpose in life, and that she has something for herself where her whole life has been for other people.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so true. Like, even though TJ is a mistake and she could have had an abortion, she talks about that, she decides to take this on as something for herself.
Yeah.
And so I can see how heartbreaking that would be for her.
Yeah, it regains some control over her life to be even like given that decision of what to do with it. And I think also to probably she knows that most people's responses are going to be like that's crazy, like you shouldn't be doing that, you know. So to have that, to make that kind of wild decision, but for herself, and also and know that she's going to get like potentially negative comments about it, is something that's actually like the first kind of powerful thing she does for herself.
I think so much of this book was based on the sense of foreboding about what other people are thinking about you.
Yeah.
Because all of these things that happen to Mary, they're things that other people could judge her for, like her job, having this child at this young age, where she lives, you know, the secrets within her family, like drug use and alcoholism. But she's just dealing with all of it. And I think she's constantly aware of people not thinking she's good enough, which is it's really quite heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Really. And it drives her to have a breakdown.
Yeah.
Well.
Especially when she's the sort of person who does so much for other people, and like her entire, like, I think she says her Aunt Bridget taught her how to cook when she was 6.
Yes.
It's just like, you should not be taking over the family meals by the time you're 7 years old.
For her, that's completely normal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and she
Sean
probably
never has to cook either.
Yeah, gains some sense of like joy in being able to do that for people as well, because she does have that instant like sense of calm as soon as she goes to do like preparing the meals the next day or something like that.
I found that really interesting, that doing these things that other people would complain about, she gets this sense of calm.
Yeah.
And she doesn't see it as a chore. She sees it as something that's giving her purpose.
Yeah.
Like, I just think Annie wrote it so well. The scenes in the garden centre, when she first gets this job, and you can I could like feel this palpable sense of calm that was washing over her when she was in there, like tending to the plants, and she had her own space and nobody was judging her. And I think part of that could be that it came after quite a traumatic chapter where we learned about how TJ was conceived. So you've gone from really quite an emotional chapter, but she wrote it so well. It really made me feel calm.
Yeah. And like also when the plant arrives at the end in the kitchen, there's this thing,
so
but like
lovely.
this great description of TJ like unboxing it and whatever, and then it says it looks lush and healthy to him, and suddenly he loves this plant and he's grateful for its presence in the kitchen, you know. And just like that, even though he doesn't really understand his mother's love for the gardening, and you know, it's so far removed from anything he'd want to do, it's like he gets like I just love the line, like, and suddenly he loves the plant, you know. It's just like,
but doesn't it also remind you a bit of TJ himself? Like, he just turned up, you know, and she had to learn to love him, and it reminded me a little bit of that.
It's really interesting.
I have to say, before we move on from the plants thing, there was a quote I really loved again in this same interview, where the interviewer pointed out that when describing Mary, Annie quite often used analogies of flowers. which I hadn't noticed, but I thought that was interesting. And she said that was a theme in the novel, and that Mary is someone who has had to grow up in the shade, and she hasn't had a lot of direct sunlight in her life. And I just thought that was so beautiful, and so true as well. Because she really has. I would say this is a novel. This is almost a novel about a secondary character.
I was just thinking that, actually. Because
it's interesting.
It goes back to that whole thing about how well, there's both like nothing really that can be written about her life, but also absolutely everything can be written about her life. And the way that she's kind of been born into this world in like pretty terrible circumstances, and like has this massive kind of gap in her life because of her own mother and everything like that, and then doesn't live for herself. It's kind of it's like she's living in the shade.
I completely agree. And it was so fascinating to read that, because she's not an interesting character like on paper, but she's so interesting to read about. Like, I didn't feel bored when I was reading it, even though not very much was happening. It was just, I would describe it as a fly on the wall book. Like, you're just sort of there as these events are going on, and a lot of them not very much happens, but it's still very interesting to read about.
Yeah, you would think that the mystery aspect would be the thing that kind of keeps your interest, but at the same time, I don't think that really kicked in until later.
And actually, I had a question to ask you. Did you initially think she had a baby with her when it's describing the chapters of her?
No, I guess very early on.
Really?
What it was, yeah. Wait, we're going into spoilers, right?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. I the way it was described, it was referred to as he.
Yeah.
And I knew it was something small and something that she could like drive along the road and whatever and go into the shop without and everything like that. But that she was also deeply caring about. I didn't know who it was. But then I also, like, as soon as Sean like started taking heroin, I actually looked up like the effects of heroin and like just to refresh myself, and the way that he was taking it and the fact he was mixing it with alcohol and all this stuff were just like instant things that lead towards death, pretty much. So I knew that as soon as that happened that it was not going to end well for him, which was really sad, because like I said, I really enjoyed his character like as a child.
I have to say that
bit was so sad.
Really did upset me, like more than I thought it would, because I've never experienced drug use, but it was so visceral the way she described it that it kind of took the wind out of me a bit.
Yeah.
Especially having seen him as a boy, and having seen their relationship growing up, and then he's there getting so ill. But even when he's older, she's still cleaning his house, and she's still doing all of these things for him.
That absolute like despair when she actually goes to find her father in the pub, which is just a place that she's never ever been in her entire life, and even though he spends like the majority of his own life there, and she just sits there and she's just like, I don't know what to do. And I think it is quite powerful that the father does actually like get into gear a bit, because he's been so absent.
I have to say, it made me really happy that he became like a good granddad.
Yeah.
Like, maybe not a fantastic one, but he started to take interest in TJ, because I was so scared that Mary was just going to be completely abandoned. And she sort of was a bit, but at least there was a little bit of support there.
Yeah, well, I think he did truly love his kids. I think he just was like it's like what she was going through as well, like not processing any of his own emotions, and like all these things about how he didn't share anything to do with the mother or his wife, and she only found it after his own death, and that but the fact that he kept all his memories and everything shows that it was something that he was just like in this deep sadness like his whole life. And
I think it's really funny. The more I think about it, I do think there are quite a few ties to Malibu Rising in terms of theme. Like, I was thinking about, why is it called Mother Mother? Like, why is it twice? And I was thinking perhaps one of them is her mother and one of them is the mother she's become.
Yeah,
maybe.
I thought that too. Yeah.
And that very much reminds me of the Reavers and Nina not wanting to become the same as her mother and yet still repeating the same mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's a theme that I've really been thinking about across these two books.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we're going to see it as a trend across other books. But this idea of becoming someone who has been before you.
Yeah, we like the ones we've chosen so far often have very strong female characters and pretty awful male characters in some. I mean, honestly, like the boy, what's his name?
TJ.
No, the TJ's father, I can't remember, but he's just awful. And that definitely reminded me of characters in Malibu Rising.
And for a particular reason, that he isn't accountable for his actions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think he fully realizes that he's done anything wrong.
Yeah.
Like, he sort of has this hazy feeling, but he does. It's not like he's racked with guilt about what he's done. And I'd say that's very similar with the characters in Malibu Rising.
Yeah.
It's this horrible idea of boys will be boys that I hate that phrase, but this idea that these men have it built in.
Yeah, his entire life becomes more about the injury which he got in being beat up for something he did.
I couldn't believe that.
I love Sean for that.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't, but I was like, yes.
I was so happy about that. And it's awful because it almost made it worse.
Yeah.
You know, it made it much more difficult for her as a mother, in a sense, that there was this animosity, but it had to be done, you know. And it's also, it's this idea that men can just walk away and not have consequences. Like, she literally replays him walking away from her across this field.
Yeah.
And it reminded me so much of June being left with the babies, and that the man can just go off and have a completely separate life, but the woman has no choice, really.
Yeah. And I thought it was quite interesting, actually, that he was forced to deal with, like, his life was forced to be affected by the fact that he'd been injured.
Yes.
He was saying that his life had been like pretty miserable because of that. But I was just like, I don't know, that whole scene where Sean does that, I quite like, because it's like she says to him, like, I'm pregnant, and then he asks, and his reaction to it, I thought, was him being like getting angry at her, but actually the anger was at Sean.
And it's interesting that as a man, both Sean and his father, their reaction when they feel a huge amount of love, but in an angry sense, is to be violent and to hurt someone. Like, he ends up hitting his children because he doesn't know what to do with all of these emotions and this turmoil, or he's drunk. And then Sean does the same thing. And it's so interesting that Mary would always do the complete opposite. Like, she'd go to comfort someone, or she'd go to make the setting comfortable, like clean for them, cook for them. But the way that they process it is through violence and denial.
Yeah. But then the reason
why
they're dealing with both of these things in like the wrong way is for the same reason.
Yeah.
They just choose to deal with it slightly differently.
But both of them, both Mary and Sean, are walking away from their problems, in a sense. Like, they don't want to emotionally deal with what's happened to them. They just keep ploughing on.
Yeah.
Until it gets
like the fact that he never mentions it to her. Yeah. Yeah. He just does it, beats this guy up, and then goes back home, and then that's the end of that, you know.
And he's like, right, I've dealt with that, you know.
Yeah.
That's that sorted.
But also like in an incredibly caring way that shows you that he does really love her. Yeah.
I also found it fascinating. This is very different, but thinking about the male characters, you see this contrast between TJ really not working hard at uni, like he's out partying, he doesn't seem to be like knuckling down, and then you see Mary literally working her ass off to be able to give him those opportunities. And you almost wish, could you not just see that, TJ, that this is what she's doing for you? But of course he won't.
But it's like,
and he shouldn't have to. But
at the time feels so like all consuming, and then the minute you leave, it was really nothing. And like, it's kind of amazing that you spend your entire like life from when you can remember being alive is spent like at school, in nursery or something. And so you have to kind of feel for him in not wanting to engage with that, but then at the same time you're kind of wishing that.
I have to say, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because that is something, I think because of the age I am, it's been on my mind all the time. Especially with uni coming to an end. Obviously very lucky to be able to go to uni, but just being aware that I'm just going to be doing a mundane job. And you're in this structure for so long, and it's all and then suddenly you're not anymore, and it's really jarring. And this book reminded me a lot about that, and this idea that you have all of these ideas of things that might happen, and then it always goes the other way.
Actually, I have a friend who is a very close friend who's 17, and so she's like got one more year left of school, and it's just like I wish I could tell her, like, because I wished away 17, because you're so close to 18, you want to be an adult, but then at the same time I do think that it is important to kind of like live it like as you would, and then think back on it like how you wish you had. And that people need that time to kind of do a TJ and decide that they don't want to be at school, and like, have that moment before.
But then it's so hard, because I remember being a child and people saying to me, you've got to make the most of being a child, your childhood is like the best time. And I resented that, because I really hated school. And I was like, this can't be the best time. And then it's funny how you become the one saying to other people, oh no, enjoy it while you can.
Well, I think it is dangerous being like, those are the best years of your life, because for some people it just isn't, whether they're like bullied or like a home situation or something like that. It just, it's not like that. So you can definitely see like when TJ kind of goes like, she doesn't understand, like it's not just like a stroppy teenager thing, it's actually him, because that's his entire world, and that's, all he knows.
But also things like he's saying, no mum, I wouldn't want to have your life, and he's like, God, I can't imagine having that, doing that job, having that life. But that's the only place she's able to find calm, and the only place she's able to like feel at peace and feel that she's doing a good job, and she knows it all really well. And I think something that I was thinking about a lot in this book is the tendency to want something for another person, and the tendency to reflect your own life against someone else's. But all of the characters in this book wanted and needed such different things. TJ couldn't have had Mary's life, but Mary wouldn't have been happy having his life either, I don't think. I don't know. She talks about wanting to go to uni, I think, but I don't think there was something she desperately wanted to do.
I think she just she just gets the grades to be able to go to university. But I think it's not, I don't know, she lives like such like so much of her life in the present. That she in just like surviving, and like the food they have, and like the, and even like what she said, that she changes, like she keeps the change for like fish and chips the next week or something. She's like always thinking for
Sean
the next survival.
She's doing that. She's doing all of these things in the background that he's not even vaguely aware of.
Which also obviously contrasts with her best friend's life as well.
I found that really interesting, especially the ending, because obviously the key to her future, Mary's future, sort of was in her past. Like, it wasn't about finding something new. It was about returning to Louise, you know, and about making a connection with that person, which I thought was really beautiful, because you could tell that Louise's house was where she had felt happy when she was growing up.
I had this slight idea. This might be completely off, and it probably honestly is, but like, I thought there might have been a little thing where she was like slightly, well, because she's obviously completely infatuated with Louise, and like the fact that she thinks that Louise like gets like the guy that she likes, she like and then she goes on to have like the perfect life, and like that's such like a like shadow hanging over her, the fact that she gets pregnant young, that there might have almost been like she was a tiny bit in love with Louise.
I got that as well,
especially, but it was never any real mention of it.
The thing that made me think that was the chapter, or the couple of pages where it was talking about Louise practicing kissing on her, and how much Mary wanted that. And it made me wonder, if she hadn't got pregnant, would she have pursued relationships with girls? Because she's never looked at herself enough to, I think, to understand that, or to realize that. Like, she's so focused on other people that I don't think she ever addressed that. Also, I thought the same.
The level of like disgust at the TJ's father, like at the dance, like even him just kissing her or something, which is something that she thinks she wants, you know. But that, just the whole experience, and then her never having anything like that again, and her also getting on quite well with like male friends, you know. I just like, it made me, I just wondered. But and then when that like line came up about the fact that Louise, like, I don't know, that whole scene, actually, the fact that she like practiced kissing on her just seemed like she was completely using Mary for her own I don't know, not even thinking about how that might affect Mary.
And also the fact that she's still so infatuated with Louise. Like that moment when Louise comes over to her in the park and the emotions are just too raw that she can't even address it. I thought that as well. I thought that was what she was getting at, that there was some sort of love between them. Like, I think it was a romantic one, but I don't think Mary realized.
I think it's actually in a way quite nice that it wasn't ever explicitly said, because it shows that there are still things that she hasn't processed, and like still parts of herself that she doesn't really know about, which gives you kind of hope for the future that she might continue to do that.
Exactly. And it gives you something like this sort of sense that she has a future, and she has things that she can pursue for herself, because you know that TJ's going off in this new direction with his father, so you kind of want something for her as well. But I was thinking, obviously Normal People has had this hugely successful adaptation. Could you see this being adapted into anything?
I could. I think it would have to be a TV show.
I agree as well.
Because I think you do need a little bit more to make it a film. But I think they could really explore the relationships in a TV show. I think it'd probably be like one of those, this is quite funny, but like those BBC like quite gloomy, you know, that sort of vibe.
That's exactly what I'm picturing, like rain outside. Like,
which I haven't seen Normal People, but that's the same idea, right?
Okay. That's exactly what I was thinking.
I don't think it's something that people would like. I don't know, sometimes I read something and I'm like, oh, that could definitely make a good TV show, a good film, whatever. But this wasn't one of those. But I can see them doing something with it.
I think they'd have to add a little bit more. Like, it's not to say that the narrative was sparse, but I feel like in terms of really compelling plot points, it worked perfectly as a book. But if you were going to translate that, I think you'd need like a few more hooks to keep people interested, like at the end of episodes.
Yeah.
Because there weren't really any points where I ended a chapter and was like, oh, I have to keep reading.
Yeah.
I was more reading it like, oh, this is quite interesting, you know.
Yeah, I think I only got that way towards the end when it was when they almost found her, you know.
How did you find the ending? Because obviously there was quite a big lead up to it.
That is part of the reason why it didn't get a full 5 stars for me, is because I thought it was
tell
rushed.
Me about this.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the only points that made it like clear it was a debut was the fact that there's like the pacing was, I feel like, quite good throughout the rest of the book, and then suddenly it was not good.
And
just everything
I agree with that.
Yeah,
that it felt very sudden. The end.
It was like she ran out of pages. Yeah,
I thought the descriptions of the hospital visits were really good.
Yeah.
Completely different scene, but one of my favourite scenes in the whole book was when Mary gave birth, because it was so completely unorthodox. Like, you're so used to seeing like these glowing mothers and, you know, almost angelic midwives doting on them. And it was so like gritty and painful.
Yeah, it's much
no one caring for her.
Yeah.
Not romanticizing it at all.
And the fact she was doing it alone.
Watching. Yeah. And how she's in the waiting room saying she's feeling unwell. Nobody's listening to her. Oh.
I was thinking though that knowing Mary, she would have been like, oh yeah, I'm okay, you know, and they would, she's so like used to not being okay that she would have, you know, just been sitting there silently suffering. And then obviously you can't do that with childbirth.
Yeah. But I find it really interesting how, and I really relate to this as a woman, that often with health-based things, I think we let it get to breaking point before it is dealt with. And that's the same with her having this breakdown, that she's only offered help once it's literally got to breaking point.
Yeah.
And I think that's very common. I think because we don't have private healthcare, you know, everything's on the NHS, which is wonderful, but there's very much this culture of, my dog's going to bark again in a minute, this culture of waiting to breaking point before you do.
Yeah, like only going when you actually really don't have another choice. Yeah. And I also thought that this is like the descriptions of her getting her period for the first time has the same kind of like impact as the actual childbirth.
Yes.
It just shows that she doesn't have time to, like, by the time she's giving birth, she doesn't have time to be like, the only things that can occupy her are like massive events, you know, that require her attention. But she actually had time to worry about herself. Yeah.
Like when she has the period, she's thinking about how embarrassing it would be if someone else sees it.
Yeah.
You know, if it leaks through her clothes. She's not thinking, oh my, this is terrible. You know, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
She's thinking, oh, I better make sure that no one else can tell that this is what I'm going
through. Like
through.
she wakes up in the middle of the night to like scrub her sheets. Yeah.
I couldn't believe that, you know, that she, I mean, I can believe it, but that she can't even wake her dad up and ask for help, you know. And I think a lot of women would relate to that, this idea that you have to suffer in silence, or that it's because of the nature of menstruation, you have to keep it really taboo, you have to keep going to the taboo and keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I think that permeates everything in Mary's life.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
She tries to keep it all hidden, and she just, I don't think that's even a conscious decision. You know, you talk about her cooking from being however young she was, and we hear about her aunt as well. Like, does her aunt say there's no crying in this house or something?
Probably something along those lines.
Quite a toxic,
yeah,
quite toxic mottos that she's spewing out. But I think it's true. The things you learn in childhood become part of who you are.
Yeah. And like she even tries to hide the pregnancy until she tries to hide everything. But the only things that she can't are like things like her period, where like, you know, you have to do something about that. Or like a baby, you can't be walking around 9 months pregnant and people not being able to tell. Yeah.
I thought it was so sad though, like how she was telling people that the father was really happy and really excited, and telling everyone that she's fine, and then she ends up having postnatal depression. But even then, she's very much like packed away and sent somewhere else to deal with it.
Yeah, there was a line that, like, because the way that that was told was so I probably will never be able to find it now, but it was so I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It was like the way that
passive, wasn't it? Like it wasn't a major thing, it just happened in the background.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. So I can see we're coming up to an hour.
Okay.
What were your overall thoughts of this book? Like looking back on it, what do you think?
I thought that, I mean, I think it's like incredibly impressive for a debut. And I'm excited to see what she writes next. And like we were saying before, that we both like to read whatever she writes next. Because I think this is probably only the beginning. And I also think that the fact that it's like coincided with her retiring from the job she's done for so many years shows that
I think is a really bold move as well. And it almost reminded me of what we've been saying of doing the thing that society doesn't want you to do and doesn't expect you to do. Like on paper, Annie Mac has an incredible job, and there will be a lot of people who think, why has she left? But she's being really brave by doing something for herself. And I think that's like the whole theme of this book.
Is she completely retiring just to...
I think she's retiring from Radio 1.
Yeah.
She said she still wants to do DJ stuff, but she wants to focus on her writing because it's making her feel really happy.
Yeah.
And she also was talking about how she doesn't want to be so interested in like the size of an audience. I think she's more interested in communicating with people.
Which just like
reminds me of this book.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The fact that one of the reasons I like her is like how she engages with people like individually or in small groups or something. That just makes so much sense. I think she's a very authentic person.
Yeah. I would like to just have a conversation with them.
I was going to say.
Yeah. I have to say I feel a lot of fondness for this book. Like I don't have a palpable sense of, oh, that was mind-blowing.
Yeah, I found it hard to write.
I felt a connection to it, like particularly with TJ, and not in the sense that I felt the same as the characters, but I really empathized with them and sympathized with them and wanted them to do well, like wanted them to feel happy at the end. They were just really nice people.
Yeah, I think also like because I posted my rating on Instagram like pretty much immediately, I got responses like even from my own family being like, what, you didn't like the book then? I was like, it's a fine rating. Like 3 means good, you know. I've tried to be more harsh with my ratings now because I'm, you know, I used to give everything like 5 stars, but 3.5 is like I thought it was very good, you know. I just, one of the things was the fact that it was like the ending was rushed, and
it did feel like it all happened.
And also I do think it was slightly too depressing.
I would say in the sense that there weren't trigger warnings for those things either. Like you hear about her father's alcoholism, but you don't hear about the drug use or the death. You know, it was,
or even the circumstances of her getting pregnant, because that was borderline. Yeah.
Although it's interesting that is never addressed explicitly. Like she never puts a label on it.
Well, it's funny because she doesn't ever actually say no to him.
No.
So I actually wonder like what it's, you know, it's obviously she didn't want it to happen, like because you're inside her head, so you know exactly how she's feeling about it. But it's like
from the outside, you don't know what's going on. Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like you could write a whole paper on that.
But again, that's something that should definitely be, well, because even if it's not rape, it's like some sort of sexual assault, you know. which again I think should have had some sort of trigger warning. I don't know. There's some publishers that actually are starting to put like a page in the front that will list.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think is really good.
I don't think this has it.
No.
No, I haven't noticed it.
It probably is on her website, I would assume. But it does need to, I don't know, the sort of, probably the amount of people who will go into a bookshop and just see this cover and read the synopsis or whatever and pick it up, you know, it could really do with having.
Especially because whether or not it's rape or sexual assault, if Sean hadn't beaten him up, he would have just walked away with no consequence. And she is the one that has to deal with the guilt and the blame. So I think a trigger warning would have been good just to have somewhere, because if I was disturbed by it and disturbed by the drug use, you know, it could potentially very much upset other people. Although I think it's good to read about these things, I think a trigger warning would have been useful.
I think there's actually like a big thing, which is probably quite interesting for us if we're wanting to go into something to do with publishing, is that authors often want them, but publishers don't.
Okay, I hadn't heard of that.
I looked into it for some project we had to do, and I think it's something that it takes like 5 seconds to convince someone that it's actually a good idea, and people are like, sure, you know. So I think it's something that is likely to change over the next few years, but it's just taking a long time to actually get going.
I feel like that's a whole discussion we could have about like whether or not you should have them, but I think for this particular text, I do think it was needed. So maybe that could be something for the paperback. But yes, was there anything else you wanted to discuss about it?
I don't think so.
I think we've had
quite
a good discussion.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for anyone watching in the future, anyone watching now. Let us know if you've read down below. And also please do let us know if you have any suggestions for books you'd like us to read in the future, because obviously we've got to choose our next pick.
Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I was thinking maybe Such a Fun Age or Station 11. But it could be something else. Did you have any that you've been interested in?
Nothing. I haven't really given it much thought for future ones, but I don't know. There's always stuff, isn't there? There's always something.
We'll find something. But anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you for joining.
And I'll see you later, Jemima.
Bye.
Bye.